Some events have transpired. I accidentally cut the fabric. My sewing machine has decided to throw a tantrum. It's giving absolutely nothing. That complicates things slightly. It's too late to change. I think I have a solution. God bless the ability to resize clothing. Hello everyone. This week I embarked on a journey to tackle my mend pile and DIY my dream summer wardrobe, and it turned out to be truly so much wilder a ride than I ever could have anticipated. There were great ups. There were also downs I have never experienced before in my life. That said, ultimately, we made it through. I am so excited to show you these finished projects. And you know, the twists and turns just add a little more flavor to the whole experience. So let's just get into it, shall we? Things started out pretty easy and calm here. I wanted to work from easiest to most intensive project, so I started with a super chill mend, patching some tiny holes I found in this dress. They were very, very small, just spots where this thin, woven viscose fabric wore out, I guess, and the holes themselves are not really a big issue, but my goal here was just to sort of seal and reinforce them to keep them from getting bigger. So my solution for this was just to cut out teeny little patches of iron-on embroidery backing and iron them on to the inside of the dress behind each of the holes. This honestly never would have occurred to me if I hadn't seen it online from other people, but it worked great. So really just trying to spread the idea here. We're spreading awareness. If you have a teeny tiny hole to repair, highly recommend trying this out. Next up, I have this skirt, which I upcycled from a dress, so I had to make this waistband myself. And as you can see, the waistband is just a bit oddly bulky. When I first did it, I just made the channel too wide for the elastic, which is causing the bulkiness, and I wanted it to lay a little flatter and look a little more defined. So my solution here was just to sew a line along the channel around the entire waistband to make the channel a little more fitted to the elastic. That's literally all I did. It was super simple. In general, I would recommend simply doing the waistband right the first time. That was my first mistake, but if you have to correct it later, this worked pretty well. Next up, we are working on this blouse, which I sewed myself and I do love, but I feel like the fit is just a little wonky. I think the bust line is too high, the length is a little too cropped. Even when I first made it a couple years ago, I think the dimensions seemed a little off to me, and I don't know if it's just getting older or the turning tides of trends, but I'm finding myself increasingly averse to crop tops over time. So now it feels even more off than it did then. Luckily, I did initially sew this with a lot of seam allowance, so my solution here was basically just to remove the bottom tier and then reattach it with less seam allowance, so both sections of the top will be a little longer. Hi everyone, it's the next day. I seam ripped the bottom ruffle off of this shirt last night, and then I remembered why I attached the ruffle so high in the first place. It's because I accidentally cut the fabric here and there's a little hole in it. So that complicates things slightly. However, I feel like I can probably pretty easily sew this hole up and then reattach the ruffle, and it should still be stable and stay in place and be slightly lower. I also really have to iron this, and hopefully all the sewing holes from where it was sewn previously, I don't know, won't be that noticeable. I've really never done something quite like this before, so I'm not totally sure how obvious the alteration will be, but we're gonna find out together. Okay, let's repair this hole and iron. I just sewed this hole up by hand in a way that is probably not technically correct, but you know, it did the job. Sometimes it can feel so paralyzing to try to figure out how to mend or DIY things like the right way, but if there's one thing you take away from my DIY videos, let it be that you can really just make stuff up a lot of the time, and if it works, it works. Then of course, I just had to iron out my fabric pieces here, which were very creased from, you know, being sewn together for a couple of years. Something no one tells you about sewing is how much of it is actually just ironing. Okay. The hole in the fabric is repaired, everything is detached and ironed, and now we just have to repin and sew this in the right spot. But before we get to that, I'm hungry. Let's take a break to eat something. To be honest with you all, I have little to no interest in cooking. There are just so many other things I would rather do with my time, like sewing or crafting, for example. But I also hate paying exorbitant prices for food delivery or takeout or eating out constantly. Enter Cook Unity, the world's first chef-to-you meal delivery service, which is basically like having a personal chef that cooks fresh, never frozen meals for you and delivers them right to your door. And right now, what should we have? We've got harissa tikka masala tofu, which sounds delicious. We've also got garlic herb grilled chicken with carrot thyme puree. I feel like I heard from someone else that this was really good. Let's go with this one. Oh my God. This smells so good. She's gorgeous. That is so good. This chicken is so moist. I feel like I've heard the fresh, never frozen like description before, but it has never truly sunken in for me how big of a difference that makes in your food. You can tell. Like, it's really good. Those mushrooms are also amazing. Okay, I'm gonna go sit down and finish this. Oh my God, I'm so bad at describing food, but every part of that was just so good. So if you're also interested in trying out Cook Unity, click the link in the description to get 50% off your first order. And now this goes in the dishwasher and I'm going back to keep sewing. All right, my next task for this blouse was to trim the edges of the pieces I was working with a bit because they were very, very uneven and kind of raggedy. Low key, I'm like, what the hell was I doing when I first sewed this? Just goes to show, you don't always have to do it right. If it works, it works. Something else that is very noticeable to me on these fabric pieces is how unevenly I originally sewed this. You could kind of see in the before shot, this top was a bit asymmetrical, and like, in hindsight, I truly don't know why I didn't just measure things, but it also really goes to show how much I've improved at sewing since then. Sometimes you really don't see your own growth and improvement until you look back in time and see how much worse you were before, but in a good way, because that means you're so much better now. As you can see, my next step here was to repin this ruffled tier onto the top, which also included re-ruffling it as I pinned it. It's kind of hard to explain how I did this, but I did explain it in depth in another DIY video from like 4 years ago, and for that video, I made these little diagrams. So we're working with different measurements here, but hopefully this kind of still shows you what I'm doing more clearly, and I will also link that video from 4 years ago in the cards if you'd like a more detailed explanation. Anyway, after doing that, I just sewed the tier back onto the top, this time leaving a much smaller seam allowance. Then I moved right along to our next project, which was seam ripping the waistband of these pants open to remove the elastic, which I will explain more about momentarily. Hello everyone, it's the next day. We're making progress. I finished reattaching this shirt together. Honestly, the way the fabric was cut was so uneven that I had to cut a lot of it off, and so I wasn't able to extend it quite as much as I had originally hoped or envisioned, but I can see it's definitely still an improvement. Then yesterday, I also took the waistband out of these pants, which I made last year, I think, and the waistband was just a little uncomfortably too tight. So the great thing about baggy pants you sewed yourself when they feel uncomfortably too tight is you can just take the waistband out, put a bigger one in. So that's our next task here. And then we might be making some things from scratch, which I'm a little more intimidated by, but I think we can figure it out. So let's put a new waistband in. I'm just gonna measure the elastic around my own waist, cut it where it fits properly. Then we can move on to maybe some more exciting projects. Once I had the elastic sewn into a loop, I just folded and pinned it back into the waistband channel and then sewed it right back up. This is honestly so surprisingly easy because the waistband channel already exists. Even when you rip it open, it's still like perfectly folded and pressed to be sewn back up. I've also done this before with thrifted skirts to make the waistband tighter. It's really easy either way, and I know it can be so intimidating to like rip open the seams of something you bought that was made professionally, but honestly, those are the easiest seams to sew back up, so I would definitely recommend giving this a try to resize any elastic waistband, make it tighter or looser. It's shockingly easy. Oh my god, I just tried on those pants and they feel so much better now. I'm so glad I did that. They're more comfortable. I gave them a slightly lower rise this time too. I'm still into a high rise, but not quite as high. And I think that's part of what was making them feel uncomfortable to me too. And I'm just like them way better. God bless the ability to resize clothing. Okay, our next task actually has to do with this hat. I love this little straw sun hat. I love to wear it in the summer. It is the perfect sunshade. However, what I don't love is this satin ribbon around my chin and my neck. When it comes down to it, this is made of plastic and it's just not that comfortable on my skin in the heat. And I'm trying to eliminate as many things like this from my wardrobe as possible, even if it's just a tiny thing like this ribbon. It's in a really unpleasant spot. So we're gonna make a new white cotton ribbon to put in here. And I actually have this fabric scrap that is the perfect length already from an old thrifted bed sheet. So we're just gonna make this into a one long, nicely hemmed strip and rethread it through here. And then I'm gonna be so much comfier. This project is incredibly straightforward. I'm just cutting the strip down to size, folding it in half, and pressing with the iron. Again, this one was honestly more ironing than sewing. I also folded the raw edges inside and pressed those in place too, and then just sewed down my pressed and folded strip along the edges to close it up. This sort of approach also works great for other kinds of straps. By the way, tank top straps, bag straps, a waist tie. It's a great way to get a nice clean fabric strip for basically any purpose. To be completely honest, in hindsight, I do think I may have made this one a little too thick, so I might go back and redo it thinner later because it was quite easy and simple to do. But for now, this is still functional, and the thickness does make it quite sturdy. Okay, our new straw hat tie is basically done. I was just trying to top stitch and my sewing machine has decided to take this moment to throw a little bit of a tantrum. So I'm just gonna take a break from this. Sometimes it just gets like overheated, but I'm tried a bunch of troubleshooting and nothing worked. So we're gonna come back to this later and I'm sure it'll be fine. It's pretty much functionally done anyway. And I know it's gonna be so much better with this hat. So now let's move on to cutting out some pieces for some actual clothes that we're gonna make from scratch. I'm very excited. I have a vision, multiple visions even. I'm not sure how many of them we will accomplish. But next up, I'm gonna try to make a pair of cute, fun, baggy shorts. I have so many cute fabrics. Wait, let me show you. Hold on. These are all thrifted. I think all three of them would make fantastic fabric for some fun little shorts. Obviously, I used these already for pants, but I think having a shorts version would also be great, and I think I have enough left. I used this to sew a skirt a few months ago, but again, I have some left over. I think it would also be great for shorts. And then I also have this purple fabric that I haven't really used for anything yet. And I think this would be great too. They all seem pretty comfy and breathable for summer. So I don't know if I'll make all three of these into shorts in this video, but we've got something fun to work with here. Let me decide which one to start with, and then we can cut the pieces. Okay, this was quite a silly, convoluted process because firstly, I was trying to like loosely trace some pants and shorts I already have to get the right fit here, but that's a little tricky to do with the elasticated waistband, so it took a few tries. Eventually, I did get that sorted out, so I started cutting the pieces, and then I decided, actually, I changed my mind. I wanted to save that plaid fabric for a top instead. We'll get to that later. So I retraced those pattern pieces onto this solid purple fabric instead, because I thought it would be fun to use a fabric I haven't used before. I only had those pattern pieces figured out for the back, so I also had to figure out the right dimensions for the front pieces on this purple fabric, but you know, we got there. We cut those out too. And then I finally pinned everything together just to make sure it all worked. Something about the way that pieces have to come together for pants or shorts, anything with a crotch, just feels like it's not really going to work every time until I pin it together. I'm always like, how could this be the right fit? These pieces don't look like pants, and then you attach them and somehow they're pants. Not to sound like the biggest nerd in the world, but math is truly like magic sometimes. It's amazing how you can make two-dimensional shapes into completely different three-dimensional shapes to fit your body. I love sewing. It's awesome. Okay. Figuring out these pattern pieces took me forever, but now I have them all pinned together and I just tried them on and they are going to be the most perfect flowy, big, baggy shorts of my dreams. And I think I'm gonna actually trace these pieces onto paper before I sew it so that I will have this pattern if I do end up making other pairs of shorts. After that though, we just gotta sew all these pieces together, add a nice elastic waistband, hem the edges, and there you go. Hi everyone. It's a week later. Some events have transpired. Let me tell you about them. Firstly, the next morning after filming that last clip, I woke up with a severe full body rash. It was an allergic reaction to an antibiotic, and it was very gnarly and icky and itchy, and it covered literally my entire body, hands and feet and face included. I am fully healed now, thank goodness, but I did take some time off filming for a couple days to just, read, wallow in self-pity, not be on camera. I thought about just continuing to sew behind the scenes off camera, but another event that occurred is that my sewing machine stopped working, which it's very old, it's a hand-me-down, so that happens from time to time, but not usually for multiple days on end. So, couldn't sew off camera anyway. Then we had one positive development, which is that I got a new hand-me-down sewing machine from my fiance's mom. She is truly the sweetest person on this planet. So everyone say, thank you so much, Preet's mom. You are an icon and a legend, and we love you. And this sewing machine works significantly better than my old one. So I was able to actually get these shorts sewn together. Now we just have to hem the legs and add the waistband. You may be wondering why I haven't done that already. That is because the final event that has affected this sewing process is the smoke from the wildfires in Canada, which have caused an air quality index of 500 in Milwaukee and many other cities. I'm sure a lot of you have been affected by this as well. And the AC window unit, which of course we also need for the record-breaking heat that we've been having this summer, actually makes our apartment less insulated from the outside air. So once we noticed it was smelling like wildfire smoke in the bedroom, we decided to head out and to stay with family for a day. Don't you guys love living in dystopian climate crisis? Isn't this awesome? Isn't it so worth it to enrich shareholder value? Isn't it worth it? Isn't this awesome? Anyway, okay, today I am back and it's time to finish these projects. So let's get sewing on my new superior sewing machine. Oh my god, what a whirlwind these past few weeks have been. For me specifically, but also I'm sure for many of us. And I hope you all are doing okay and taking care of yourselves, and I'm sending you all my love and support. I gotta say, the rash was probably the most miserable part of the past couple weeks for me. But like I said, it did give me an excuse to lie around in bed reading all day, which was great because I hadn't read a book since like March. I've just felt too busy somehow, despite also spending hours on my phone every day. I ended up reading The God of the Woods by Liz Moore in like 5 days, which was very enjoyable. It is a compulsively readable novel. It's also over 500 pages, and I don't know if this is embarrassing to admit, but in adult life, I tend to avoid books that are like 400 pages or more because I feel like I'm going to read it too slowly and then I'm going to forget everything because it takes me too long. But I'm glad I decided to embrace this book despite the length, because it turns out when I had the free time, I was able to read it quite quickly after all. I think a lot of us have this sense that like we've lost the part of our brains or the focus we had in childhood to just like get lost in a long book for hours on end. And like, I don't know, maybe that's true for some people. But I think for me, more realistically, it's just that I don't often have hours of free time on end to spend reading. And also, sometimes a book is bad or boring, or it's just not captivating. So maybe it's not that our brains are broken, maybe we just need to find more free time and better books. Without any spoilers, I will tell you the premise of this book, The God of the Woods, is that a 13-year-old girl goes missing at a summer camp. And it's definitely, a little dark, but it was also kind of the perfect summer read because it's set at a summer camp. The writing was super engaging, really well paced, the plot was super propulsive. I was totally sucked in from beginning to end. My only critique really is that some of the themes were a little heavy-handed, but it wasn't to a degree that was like constantly getting in the way or anything, and I still found it a very enjoyable read overall, especially if you love a sort of mysterious plotline with lots of different characters who all have different layers to uncover. I think you would really enjoy this book. All right, it is several hours later. I don't know why it took me several hours to do this. Sewing always takes longer than I think, but the shorts are done. Now, we just have one last sewing project to embark on. I set out this week to include in my projects some cute flowy shorts and a fun flowy tank top. So that is the last thing we're gonna make. And I'm gonna use this fabric. I did, as you saw, already start cutting this into shorts and then changed my mind and decided I wanted to use it for a top instead, and also realized I don't think I have enough to make shorts anyway. But I think since the top is made up of like more smaller pieces, the dimensions of the fabric I have will work for that. So let's get to cutting out these pieces and hopefully we can finish the whole thing tonight. Alright, thank you so much for humoring me with my book tangent. Now let me get back to actually talking about the sewing. This tank top was an interesting project because I was sort of figuring out the design as I sewed it together, trying to work with the limited fabric I had. I didn't have anything to trace or reference in my wardrobe. So as a project, it was kind of like a puzzle. I made the bodice section out of 4 different strips of fabric, one for the front, one for the back, and one for each side. I also initially measured them all to be the same height, but later I ended up cutting and hemming them to be more like this, which definitely created a smoother, better fit. Then on the bottom section, I wanted the shape to flare out a bit, but I didn't want it to be super poofy and voluminous. So I just cut my front and back pieces with like an A-line shape, but without any gathering at all. In hindsight, I do think creating a slightly gathered bottom tier would have been better, but we ended up adapting the design in a different direction, which you'll see later. Hello. I come to you very sweaty and in kind of a poorly lit room with an update. It's nighttime now. This is where we're at. I thought this was going to be it and I was just going to add straps. But when I try this on, it's giving absolutely nothing. The shape is just bad. I feel like I should have made this bottom tier a little more voluminous, but I sewed this all with French seams and it's too late to change now. So the other option to improve the silhouette of this is to do some sort of cinching in here, like this. I can't just sew it like that because then I won't be able to get the top on and off. However, I think I have a solution, which is to add some ties. I'm going to add 2 little tie strings right here. I'm going to open up this seam, put them in there, and then add 2 over here. And then I can tie each of them together on either side, and we'll have a cute little ribbon bow tie thing, and it'll give this top a much better silhouette. That's what I'm going to try to do to finish this off, and then just add some straps, hem the bottom, and that's it. I hope it works. I guess we'll see. I gotta be honest, I felt like I was struggling with much simpler aspects of this top, so I was really delighted with how simple and straightforward these ties ended up being to make and insert into the top. It was surprisingly easy to just rip open the seam connecting the bodice to the bottom part in a few small spots, insert the little ties in there, and then just sew the seam back up. It was easy, straightforward, it worked really cleanly, which is a rare and incredibly satisfying occurrence for me when sewing. After doing this, all that was left was to add the straps and hem the bottom edge, which I ended up doing off camera because you'll see on the final product it was very straightforward. I feel like you didn't particularly need to watch that part. Plus, you know, I had to keep some of it a little mysterious so I can really wow you with the final reveal. I want you guys to be impressed. I just want you to think it's cool and I did a good job. All right, everyone, this has been such a journey, but we made it. We are officially finished with all of these projects. So let me show you our final reveals. Okay, this first one is actually very boring. You can't see any difference unlike the actual whole dress, but here you can see what the tiny hole looked like, and then here it is with the iron-on backing. It actually doesn't really look much different from the front because the holes are so hard to see anyway, but this will keep the hole from getting bigger, so very helpful. Next, we have this waistband, which looked a little weirdly bulky, but now I think it is definitely improved. It's still a little awkward. It's like the bulkiness has shifted down to just below the waistband, but honestly, that's fine with me because now at least the waistband itself is lying flatter and smoother. I feel more comfortable in it now. I think it lays smoother with the top over it as well. This is working better for me. Next up, this striped blouse. The difference is subtle, but it feels really significant to me. When I compare the before and after, it really feels like it goes from sort of shrunken and just a little off to the same top in the same style, but just noticeably better fitting. When you look closely, you can see the lines where the previous stitching was. You can also see the hole I repaired, but this is a casual enough top that I don't mind those subtle flaws. You really wouldn't see them unless you're looking for them. They're not a big deal to me. And I'm guessing the older stitch lines will blend in a little better over time with wash and wear. As it is though, I'm quite happy with this. It definitely feels a little more wearable to me now, and I'm excited to bring it back into my wardrobe rotation for the rest of summer. Next, we have these striped pants with the loosened waistband, which I wanted to show with the same top because the difference is subtle, but I'm hoping you can see it on camera. Regardless of what you can see, it feels so much better. It's such a comfy fit. I was avoiding wearing these in my closet, and now I'm so excited to start wearing them again. These really are one of my favorite things I've ever made, and honestly one of my favorite bottoms I own, so I am so happy I was able to adjust them. I can't wait to wear them. Next up, we have our hat ribbon transformed from synthetic satin that got sweaty and irritating to soft, breathable cotton. Honestly, I don't really think this necessarily looks better, but it absolutely feels better. The instant I took the old ribbon out and put this one in for the try-on, I was like, oh, this is vastly superior. I am noticing a little puckering along the edge now that it's actually threaded through the hat. You can see it along the top edge here, so I may try to do something about that in the future, or again, I might even redo this but thinner, but for now, this is much more comfortable. Now we are getting into the items fully sewn from scratch, starting with these purple shorts. I am so in love with these. They are exactly what I had in mind, exactly what my wardrobe was missing. They feel so comfortable, light, flowy, and easy to wear, but I think they also look really stylish and like fashion-y, especially with like a cute little blouse on top. I think they work perfectly with this plaid one. I think they'd also look great with the green and white striped blouse from earlier and the purple plaid tank top you haven't seen yet. I just cannot wait to start wearing these. I love them. And just because I'm proud of my work here, I also want to show you the insides. Here they are inside out. I don't have a serger, so I did French seams to seal everything up neatly, and I think it looks so nice and neat and clean even on the inside, which is incredibly satisfying. And finally, the piece that was definitely the biggest challenge, but also maybe the one I'm the most proud of, this plaid purple tank top with little cinching ties. This honestly isn't exactly what I was originally picturing when I started. I made a lot of adjustments on this piece as I went, but overall, I am so happy with the problem solving I ended up doing. I think these ties are adorable and make the top so much more special in addition to improving the silhouette. I also realized, honestly, once I actually finished everything, I liked the silhouette a lot more than I initially thought. After I had added the straps and hemmed everything, even the base silhouette looks nicer to me. But if I want to wear it like that, with the looser boxier shape, I can do that too and just tie the bows a little looser like this, which I think also looks so cute. And for a third styling option, I can also tie the bows in the center like this. Honestly, my only complaint about this piece is that I think I actually inserted the little ties for the bows a little too close together, so in the intended tie style, it's actually still a little loose. So I might go back and space them out a little more at some point, but I also think this middle tie situation helps give me another option when I do want that more fitted shape. Altogether, I just love adaptable clothing. I'm so delighted by the different ways these ties can work for this top. I'm so delighted by the top overall and everything that went into it, and I am so excited to have this in my wardrobe. Also, again, here is this garment inside out. I sewed it with French seams because I wanted it to be really neat and clean inside, and that did limit my ability to go back and adapt things later, but at least it looks beautiful inside and it's very secure in there. So I have to show you that too, to make it all worth it. Thank you so much for joining me on this tumultuous ride. It felt tumultuous to me. I hope it didn't actually feel too crazy or stressful to you watching. Please let me know your thoughts on these projects. If you have a favorite, if you've made anything fun recently, I would love to hear in the comments. And if you do, leave a comment, watch another video, and subscribe to the channel. I heard some wonderful and lovely person in your life will give you a hand-me-down sewing machine. And if you already have one, they'll give you a superior upgrade to the one you already have.